Welcome to Natu Reads, an audio library of revolutionary texts. Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism, by Kwame Nkrumah, Part 12. The tin, aluminum, and nickel giants. The tin empire of Patino of Canada Limited and its associates spreads from South America to the United Kingdom and North America, and across Africa into the Pacific and Asia. Capitalized at $10 million, Patino of Canada has issued and paid up 1,971,839 shares of $2. Of these, 47.2% are held by a Panamanian financing house within the Patino Group, Compañía de Bonos Acciones y Negocios Industriales, Cobanisa. Patino's purchase into General Tin Investments Limited in 1962 brought this tycoon into a large share of the United Kingdom's spread in the tin mining and dealing world. General Tin Investments is charged with acquiring and holding shares in mining, finance, and industrial companies, its principal holdings being in those companies connected with the tin industry. It carries out its financing operations through a wholly owned subsidiary, General Metal Securities London Limited. A. Patino presides over both boards, where he has as colleagues Count G. Dubois-Bouvray, J. Ortiz Linares, and E. R. E. Carter. Carter is president of Brunswick Mining and Smelting Corporation and of several other companies associated with the Patino Group. Brunswick comes within the Morgan sphere of influence through the interest maintained by St. Joseph Lead Co. We also know that Soga Mines has concerned itself with a substantial investment with the New Brunswick mines of Brunswick Mining. The spokes that lead out from the Société Générale de Belgique's African hub into the affairs of the most powerful financial monopolies in the world seem ever increasing. Patino's direct investments in Canada cover substantial holdings in Copper Rand Chibougamau Mines Limited, Advocate Mines Limited, Nipissing Mines Limited, and Brunswick Mining. By financial jugglery, consolidation of the principal Canadian companies of the group was achieved in 1960. This was done through an agreement between Copper Rand, Nipissing Mines, Chibougamau Jacoulet Mines Limited, Portage Island Chibougamau Mines Limited, Patino of Canada, and Bankmont & Co., a financial house. Copper is the chief mineral mined, but gold and silver are also produced. The Copper Rand property covers some 10,000 acres held in 4 concessions. Portage Island is a copper-gold property of Copper Rand, and the Jacoulet mine, a copper property. Nipissing enters into the picture as a financial contributor to the development of the Portage Island property. It is the holder of a number of mining claims in Quebec and holds diverse share interests. Its operations branch into the USA through a wholly owned subsidiary, Appalachian Sulfides Incorporated, with mining rights to ore deposits in the states of Vermont and North Carolina. Nipissing bought into Brunswick Mining by acquiring from a Patino subsidiary, Patino Mines and Enterprises Consolidated, Incorporated, 137,143 shares and $537,429 worth of 5% holding bonds in Brunswick, giving to Patino 1,061,149 shares of Nipissing. Patino's holdings in the Chibougamau Group, in association with Maritimes Mining Corporation and the Irving Oil Co. Limited in a 40% purchase of Brunswick Mining shares, extend the Patino empire substantially into fields other than tin. American and Belgian mining and financial interests as powerful as Patino's have linked together with Patino of Canada in investigating and developing mineral deposits on an exclusive basis across 750 square miles of land on the northeastern coast of Newfoundland, under rights granted to Advocate. At the end of 1960, proven ore reserves totaled 35 million tons of commercial grade. Advocate is developing asbestos under a project undertaken by Patino of Canada in conjunction with Canadian Johns Manville Co. Limited, Ahmet Corporation Incorporated, and Financière Belge de l'Espèce-Ciment SA. The participants have agreed to place the property on an operating basis by furnishing to Advocate a total sum of $17,900,000. Canadian Johns Manville will contribute 49 to 62%, Patino 17 to 30%, Ahmet and Financière Belge 16 to 54% each. Advocate has been capitalized at $23 million, and the parties to the agreement share in the capital ratio to the amount of their contributions, based on denominations of $100. Canadian Johns Manville, which is tied up with the Imperial Commerce Bank, the largest in Canada, upon which sits a director of Johns Manville, is a fully owned subsidiary of the Johns Manville Corporation of the United States. Its main interests are in asbestos, which it processes into fiber and manufactures into building and industrial materials. It is in control of Advocate's management and has also a majority interest in and management control of Coalinga Asbestos Co. of California, USA, a joint venture with Kern County Land Co. The parent Johns Manville of America manufactures products from asbestos, magnesia, and perlite, having manufacturing plants in America, Canada, and elsewhere. Advocate has advanced certain monies to maritime mining, which has close relations with Patino by reason of its associations with the purchase of the St. Joseph lead holdings in Brunswick Mining. Maritime's share of this purchase was 46% at a cost of $4,840,000. Maritime works copper on claims in New Brunswick, Canada, and properties in Newfoundland owned directly and also indirectly via a fully owned subsidiary, Gull Lake Mines Limited, through which it also owns all the shares of Gullbridge Mines Limited. It has an arrangement with Falconbridge Nickel Mines, giving the latter the right to a maximum 1/3 participation in any future financing which Maritime might undertake. Maritime and Patino of Canada share a director in W.F. James, who is also on the Falconbridge Quebec Metallurgical Board, another holding company having wide interests inside and outside Canada. These include a platinum property in South Africa's Transvaal, a small gold mine in Brazil, and nickel and cobalt interests in New Caledonia, where, through links with Patino, it is associated with Le Nickel. Unfortunately for Patino, certain assets in Bolivia have had to be relinquished under a nationalization program. Bolivia was, for many more years than its people cared about, drained by foreign interests of its mineral resources, in which tin predominates, but which also includes silver, lead, zinc, antimony, and copper. Its oil deposits were large enough to entice Rockefeller's Standard Oil Co., who entrenched themselves by working a large concession, while the Guggenheim Brothers of America, as well as British, French, and others, gathered in tin and copper over a long period, paying the Indian workers about 6 pence a day for their labor. The properties of the Delaware Incorporated Patino Mines and Enterprises Consolidated were nationalized by the Bolivian government on 31 October 1952, invested in a state-owned property, the Corporación Minera de Bolivia Comibol. These Patino properties consisted of mining and placer claims, water rights, mill sites, reduction, concentrating in hydroelectric plants, as well as a railway connecting the mines with a point on the main line of the Antofagasta Bolivian Railway Co. Limited. Patino Mines formed another Delaware subsidiary in 1959, Patino Enterprises Incorporated. As one of the largest entrepreneurs in the tin industry, A. Patino has a seat on the main consolidated organizations looking after the interests of those engaged in this field, usually in the company of the Count of Bois-Bouvray and J. Ortiz Linares. All three of them are to be found on the board of British Tin Investment Corporation Limited, a United Kingdom company formed in 1932 to take over British American Tin Corporation Limited. Together with its wholly owned subsidiaries, Tin Industrial Finance and Underwriting Limited and BTIC Overseas Limited, British Tin holds large blocks of shares in the Malayan tin mining industry, as well as investments in companies producing other metals and minerals. General Tin Investments has a 55% interest in Eastern Smelting Co. Limited, owning smelting works in Penang, Malaya, a wholly owned subsidiary of Consolidated Tin, Williams Harvey & Co. Limited holds 75% of the issued share capital of Makeri Smelting Co. Limited, incorporated in Nigeria in 1961. Makeri has built a tin smelter on the Jos Plateau, northern Nigeria, which began production in December 1961. Vivian, Younger and Bond Limited, the sole selling agents of Consolidated Tin, are well established in Nigeria. London Tin Corporation Limited board does not include any of the Patino directors, but the relationship with the Patino interests are obviously established when we note on its board C. Waite, chairman and managing director of Consolidated Tin Smelters, and its subsidiary, Williams Harvey & Co., and a director of British Tin Investment Corporation and General Tin Investments. Mr. Waite also sits on the board of Consolidated Tin subsidiaries, the Penpole Tin Smelting Co. Limited, Eastern Smelting Co., Symington & Sons Limited, Rubber Merchants, and that of the distributing agents Vivian, Younger and Bond. As director of Southern Kinta Consolidated Limited, Southern Malayan Tin Dredging Limited, Kamunting Tin Dredging Limited, Malayan Tin Dredging Limited, Mr. Waite obviously represents on these boards the interests, including those of Patino, of Consolidated Tin. A director, moreover, of the Chartered Bank and a member of the London Bank of British and Foreign Marine Insurance Co. Limited, he certainly represents the financial interests supporting them. This conclusion is backed by the directorial presence of Francis G. Charlesworth on British Tin, as a chairman of Malayan Tin Dredging and Southern Malayan Tin. Mr. Charlesworth is also a director of certain other tin companies operating in the Malayan area, namely Kramat Pulai Limited, Akam Tin Limited, and Air Hitam Tin Dredging Limited. He is, moreover, a member of the board of Locana Mineral Holdings Limited, which is honored by including a scion of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, HIRH the Archduke Robert Charles of Austria. Locana is an investment and holding company, connected principally with the Canadian mining industry. Mr. Charlesworth is a direct link with the world of tin mining and dealing through this association with British Tin and its interests in Malaya. Sitting alongside Mr. Charlesworth on the Locana board are Mr. N.K. Kindhead Weeks and J.N. Keek. Both also sit on the boards of important South African and Rhodesian companies. Mr. Keek is the chairman of Chicago Gaika Development Co. Limited, a company existing since 1897 and having 17 gold claims in the Sebakwe district of Matabeleland, Rhodesia, which was at one time within the direction of British South Africa Company. Mr. Keek's other associations are with the London and Rhodesian Mining and Land Co. Limited, owning directly 384 gold mining claims, base metal claims, and land covering 757,000 acres in Rhodesia. Some of the properties are leased on a royalty basis, and ranching operations are also carried on. Subsidiary companies of London and Rhodesian include Mazoe Consolidated Mines Limited, Lonhro Exploration Co. Limited, and African Investment Trust Limited, which took over all the company's investments in 1958, except shares in subsidiaries and trade investments. Its associates include Arcturus Mines Limited, Homestake Gold Mining Co. Limited, Coronation Syndicate Limited, and North Charter Land Exploration Co. 1937 Limited. Among further interests acquired by London and Rhodesian in 1961 were 90% of the Consolidated Holdings Private Limited, 100% of Mashaba Gold Mines Private Limited, which operates the Empress Gold Mine in Mashaba, near Fort Victoria, Rhodesia, 36.66% of Kanyemba Gold Mines, with 51% of Associated Overland Pipelines of Rhodesia Private Limited, in exchange for 1,500,000 shares in London and Rhodesian, and an option on another 2 million. That London and Rhodesian mining comes within the Oppenheimer Group interests, there can be no doubt, despite the separate front that is kept up. G. Abdenor, a director of Arcturus Mines, Coronation Syndicate, Homestake, Kanyemba, and Mazoe, is also a member of the boards of Kalkan Mines Limited, Northern Rhodesia, Sparwater Gold Mining Co. Limited, and West Sparwater Limited, as is also S.F. Dench, who is chairman of the West Sparwater and of Coronation Syndicate in Kanyemba. Sparwater Gold is among the interests of Consolidated Goldfields, while Henderson's Transvaal Estates Limited, of which Mr. Dench is director, comes within the Oppenheimer African Investment Trust group of holding companies, on whose board sits Mr. Keek. It is, in fact, the total owner of African Exploration Co. Limited, which gives secretarial aid to West Sparwater and Coronation Syndicate. Interestingly enough, Henderson's Transvaal Estates has a fully owned subsidiary, Henderson Consolidated Corporation Limited, which itself has a total subsidiary, Mineral Holdings Limited, owning freehold lands in the Transvaal and Orange Free State, totaling 3,706 acres, and mineral rights over a further 689,380 acres. In addition, it has 2 mineral concessions in Swaziland, totaling 84,019 acres. Another direct wholly owned subsidiary of Henderson's Transvaal is Mineral Holdings Investments Limited, which holds 720,000 shares in Leslie Gold Mines Limited and 200,000 in Bracken Mines Limited, both of them belonging to the Union Corporation group of the Oppenheimer Empire. Both mines enjoy a loan of £1 million each from the National Finance Corporation of South Africa, in which Anglo-American Corporation and a number of other groups and institutions associated with it have substantial interests. J.N. Keek also occupied the managing director's position on Rhodesia Railways Trust Co. Limited, the other 2 Oppenheimer financial concerns, Willoughby's Consolidated Co. Limited and Willoughby's Investments LO Limited. Mr. Keek's associate director, N.K. Kindhead Weeks, is a director of such important Oppenheimer enterprises as Wankie Colliery, linked with Tanganyika concessions in Union Minière, Chibuluma Mines, Chisangwa Mines, and Chambishi Mines, and also Charterland Exploration Limited, all of them in Rhodesia. Charterland Exploration has been granted exclusive prospecting rights by British South Africa Co. over areas totaling some 118,000 square miles in Zambia. Of the organizations dominating the aluminum industry, we note first the Aluminum Co. of America, Alcoa, and the Aluminum Empire of Mellon. This company mines bauxite in Arkansas and has subsidiaries digging and bringing out ore from far-flung places to feed the smelting and processing works in the United States. These are sited mainly in the southern states, though there are works at Messina, New York. Casting and fabricating plants are operating in 12 of the American states, while wholly owned subsidiaries are exploring for raw materials in Europe, Central and South America, the Caribbean, Australia, and Africa. Suriname Aluminum Co. is the principal ore-producing subsidiary. It mines bauxite in the Dutch-held territory of Suriname, part of Guyana, which stretches over the northeastern corner of the South American continent, lying north of the Amazon and south of the Orinoco. Under an agreement with the Suriname government, Suriname Aluminum has a 75-year bauxite mining concession. It is building power facilities and will construct a 60,000-ton aluminum smelter. The eventual construction of a bauxite refinery utilizing local ores is envisaged, according to the company's publicity material. Another full subsidiary is mining bauxite in the Dominican Republic, and, in May 1960, mining rights were acquired over 30,000 acres of Jamaica. Because of the antitrust laws, there is legally no direct connection between Alcoa and Aluminum Limited, but they are both owned by the same Mellon Davis-dominated group of United States shareholders. 2 brothers, Arthur V. Davis of Alcoa and Edward K. Davis of Aluminum Limited, were for many years president of the respective companies. When the latter died in 1947, he was succeeded by his son, Nathaniel V. Davis. The size of the Davis block of shares in the Mellon Aluminum Companies is about a third of that of the Mellons. In 1957, Fortune, the American journal read by all who would be well informed on matters of big business, listed Arthur V. Davis as one of 7 persons with fortunes between $400 million and $700 million. Of the other 6, 4 were Mellons. Aluminum Limited's Davis is a director of the Mellon Bank. United Kingdom provides, as a subsidiary, Alcan Industries Limited, and France contributes a further wholly owned subsidiary in SA des Bauxites et Alumines de Provence, in which Aluminum Limited has invested some $100 million. Its mines produced 300,000 tons in 1960, from which alumina is processed. Making itself independent in the sphere of transport, Alcan created Sakene Shipping Limited, fully financed by itself, to own and charter a fleet of ships for carrying the group's bauxite, alumina, and ingot. Though Kaiser and Reynolds set up aluminum companies as an attempt at independence from the Mellon Empire, in the case of Kaiser, financial alliance was formed early. Reynolds also has not found it possible to keep entirely aloof from the Mellon tentacles. Formed in mid-1928, Reynolds Metals Co. created in 1940 its subsidiary, Reynolds Mining Corporation, to work 6,100 acres of bauxite land, which it had obtained in Arkansas, and to mine fluorspar in Mexico, which is shipped for processing at the company's works in America. Abroad, Reynolds owns bauxite mines and exploration tracts in northeast British Guyana, as well as in Haiti and Jamaica. The dried ores are shipped to plants in Massachusetts, Delaware, Arkansas, and Texas, USA, more than 3 million tons having been mined and shipped during 1961. Other subsidiaries and affiliates operate in Bermuda, Venezuela, Philippines, Mexico, Canada, Australia, Africa, Colombia, and other parts of the world. Reynolds Jamaica Mines Limited in 1957 acquired the rights from the Jamaican government to mine bauxite for 99 years on all lands then owned or held by it under option and returned for ore royalties and taxes. These lands amounted to 74,000 acres. Mining leases have been obtained on 5,822 acres. The United Kingdom end of the Reynolds aluminum activities is operated through the British Aluminum Limited. At one time, it looked as though Mellon would take over the British company, but an alliance between Tube Investment Limited and Reynolds secured them 96% control of British Aluminum TI, secured them 96% control of British Aluminum, TI taking 49% and Reynolds 47%. The Commonwealth, Europe, Asia, and Africa are embraced within the company's sphere of activities, its subsidiaries and affiliates controlling power resources, bauxite properties, processing works, even a grand hotel and a pension trust, all of which are listed among Tube Investments' interests as the major parent company. British Aluminum took over Reynolds TI Aluminum in mid-1961, owned at the time 51% by TI and 49% by Reynolds. Members of the Reynolds family sit on the British Aluminum Board, which accommodates WBC Perrycoast, director of Ghana Bauxite Co. Limited, a wholly owned subsidiary of the company, registered in London in 1933. Other African interests are represented by EFO Gascoigne, chairman of Tanganyika Holdings, Kenton Gold Areas, Zambezia Exploring, and Zambezia Investment, all within the Tanganyika concession sphere. The objective British press is also represented by the presence on British Aluminum's board of Sir Geoffrey Crowther, one-time editor of The Economist and now its deputy chairman. Commercial Union Assurance is also among Sir Geoffrey's and Lord Plowden's directorships. FRIAC International pour la Production de l'Alumine, Guinea, is one of British Aluminum's biggest interests in Africa, in which it holds 10% of the shares. The project is to produce, initially, 480,000 tons of alumina annually, of which 10% will be available to British Aluminum. The Mellons were the original party directly interested in developing Guinea's bauxite resources, but, unable to force the pressure on the newly independent African state, their people were forced to retire, having fruitlessly dispersed, according to their own estimates, some $20 million. Ollie Matheson is within the Rockefeller sphere of influence, represented on the chemical company's board by Lawrence Rockefeller, who acts for the family in its activities outside oil. Control, however, is shared with the Morgans. Thus, the Mellon Group gave way to an overwhelmingly more powerful compact of interests hidden behind the Olin Matheson facade. The second largest holder of FRIA is a combination of the Péchinet and Ugine companies. Péchinet is an abbreviation of Compagnie des Produits Chimiques et Électrométallurgiques. Among its directors is Paul Gillet, an honorary governor of Société Générale de Belgique, chairman of Union Minière, an association of many of the foremost concerns exploiting Africa's resources. Its chairman is Paul de Vitry, a director of the Banque de Paris et des Pays-Bas. This bank, of which Henri Lafont was also a director, besides sitting with Paul de Vitry en Péchinet, operates in the Congo and South Africa. In fact, it is ubiquitous in the new ventures going forward in Africa, especially those in the new states bordering the Sahara. Péchinet, registered in Paris at the opening of the year 1896, is the continuation of a company formed over 100 years ago in 1855, and, like the other leading mining and metallurgical companies in France, has links with the country's leading banking houses. Its proliferations are manifold, covering the production of bauxite, barytes, and lignite, chemicals manufacture, the processing of aluminum and other metals, and electrometallurgical products. It manufactures almost everything from plastics, through iron alloys, graphite products, up to new metals and nuclear products. It holds part and total portions of affiliated companies in France and other countries in Europe, Africa, and elsewhere. Its mining operations spread from north to south of France and into Africa. Responsible today for 4/5 of France's output of aluminum, Péchinet's trading in the metal accounts for nearly 60% of its turnover. Its only sizable French competitor is Ugine, which collaborates with Péchinet on investment policy, as we note above, and in joint sales subsidiary Aluminium Français. Both firms are expanding rapidly, and Péchinet has as widespread operations as British and American aluminum companies, though the latter have greater output. It is expected that Péchinet-Ugine capacity may reach 300,000 tons by 1963. Péchinet uses 15% of a total French power output, so that the discovery of natural gas at Lac and southwestern France made a considerable contribution to its expansion. It had pushed the aluminum sector of its exports to 37%, in hopes to save on its production costs by the introduction of a new process for reducing bauxite to aluminum. A pilot plant has been put into operation, and its success will enable Péchinet to expand into new aluminum industries. Through the Banque de Paris, which is said to be the biggest shareholder in the important Franco-Norwegian chemical concern, Norsk Hydro, majority controlled by the Norwegian government, Péchinet may become linked with the project. The Norwegians are anxious to increase their output from the present level of 200,000 tons to 600,000 tons by 1970. Already, Péchinet is in consortia operating in Greece, Spain, and Argentina, and has holdings in Senegal and Madagascar projects. As a matter of fact, there's hardly a new consortium springing up in Africa today, particularly in the Maghreb, in which Péchinet does not have an oar. It certainly has a watchful eye on the vast natural gas deposits of the Sahara, which are not uneconomically distant from the bauxite fields of Mali. The international nickel field binds a select coterie of extractive, processing, and financial concerns, whose control keeps it within fairly exclusive numerical limits. Grouped around the International Nickel Co. of Canada Limited, INCO, Falconbridge, Sherrod Gordon Mines Limited of Canada, and Faraday Uranium Mines Limited and Freeport Sulphur Co. of the United States are not geographically confined. In unraveling their engagements, we find their penetrations in Africa as well as in other parts of the world. INCO's direct link with the Oppenheimer mining interests in Africa has already been made apparent through the interlocking directorships of Sir Ronald L. Prain and Sir Otto Niemeyer. We will see further how, through its interests in certain mines, these are connected indirectly with combinations having definite ties to the exploitation of Africa's mineral resources. It is when the financial interests behind them are examined that we find the continuity of power. The name Monde immediately brings to mind nickel, as well as explosives, chemicals, and arms, and we find it linked to the most powerful international nickel organization under the form of International Nickel Co. Monde Limited. It was the founder of Brunner Monde & Co. Limited, Ludwig Monde, who, having invented the ammonia soda process and found a cheap source of power from small coal, discovered a method of recovering nickel from low-grade ores. This led to the finding, acquisition, and development of mines in Canada, the world's present chief source, the ores coming almost entirely from the Sudbury district of Ontario. Brunner Mond, together with Novel Industries, United Alkali Co. Limited, an amalgamation of 48 works, and British Dyestuffs Corporation Limited, were knit together in December 1926 to form Imperial Chemical Industries Limited. Mond Nickel Co. Limited was established in 1914 to exploit the mine that adjoined Inco's properties on the Sudbury Range. The interests of both companies were fused in 1928. Change of name to its present form was made in February 1961, and the company is a subsidiary of Anglo-Canadian Mining and Refining Co. Limited, which owns the 9 million shares issued out of the 11 million authorized to compose the capital of £5 million. Anglo-Canadian is itself a wholly owned subsidiary of Inco. Among the extensive properties and plants owned by International Nickel Mond in the United Kingdom are refining works in South Wales and a precious metals refinery in a London industrial area, a number of rolling mills in various parts of Britain, as well as the entire share capital of Henry Wigan & Co. Limited, manufacturers of nickel and nickel alloys and other products. Two interesting items in Nickel Mond's treasury are the entire capital of Clydach Estates Limited and Mond Nickel Retirement System Trustees Limited. This is the United Kingdom end of Inco, which has appointed its delegate board and consolidates the UK accounts with its own. In order to keep its plants working to fullest capacity, Inco has arrangements with associates for the treatment of their products. Hence, certain nickel concentrates in excess of its own treatment facilities are worked for Sherritt Gordon Mines, and there is an arrangement with the Texas Gulf Sulphur Co., covering the operation of a pilot plant to investigate processes for the recovery of elemental sulfur. These agreements issue out of certain commodity holdings that give identity of interest to apparently competitive concerns, tied up with oil and its allied financial groups. The controlling interests in Inco are not apparent, as there is no obvious United States parent, although American capital for most of the leading financial groups predominates, and Inco owns the entire capital stock of the International Nickel Co. Incorporated, which owns the operating assets located in the United States, and of Whitehead Metal Products Co. Incorporated, American distributors of nonferrous metals. Lawrence Rockefeller is on the United States Inco board. The Canadian company's chairman is H.S. Wingate, a director of the American banking house of J.P. Morgan & Co., and of the Canadian Pacific Railway. William C. Bellenius, an Inco director, also sits on directorates of various Bell telephone companies, as well as on that of the Guarantee Trust Co. of New York, Morgan-controlled. Another Inco director, R.S. McLaughlin, is a director of General Motors and on the board of the Toronto Dominion Bank, which links with DuPont interests. DuPont itself is under heavy Morgan influence. Donald Hamilton McLaughlin is president of the American Trust Co., which has 3 interlocking directorates with the Morgan banks and insurance companies. He also presides over the board of Homestake Mining Co., linked through its holdings in Indorado Mining Co. with Newmont Mining Co. within the Morgan sphere of influence. Cerro de Pasco, another of D.H. McLaughlin's directorships, owns a number of companies operating mining and oil properties in Peru. Newmont Mining has a substantial interest in Cerro de Pasco. Theodore Giles Montague, another American on Inco's board, is chairman of the Board & Co., a trustee of the Bank of New York, and a director of American Sugar Refining Co. All 3 of these companies is within the family control of the Rockefellers. John Fairfield Thompson also reflects U.S. interests on the Inco board. Another trustee of the Bank of New York, he represents the same interests on Inco's American distributing organization, Whitehead Metal Products Co., and points to the link with Texas Gulf Sulphur, under Morgan and Standard Oil Rockefeller domination. J.F. Thompson reveals the African interests of these groups by the directorships on American Metal Climax and its British associates, Amalgamated Metal Corporation and Henry Gardner & Co. Limited, who are also connected with French tin and nickel interests. These are some of the giant combinations involving tin, aluminum, and nickel, which are draining away the mineral resources of Africa. 14. Union Minière du Haut-Katanga. There's perhaps hardly an industrial organization in the world that has been so widely publicized over the last 5 years as Union Minière, because of the ducks and drakes it has played with the establishment of Congo independence and unification. This great mining company has been, since Congo's independence, the bone of contention between the Congolese government and the secessionist Katanga province. Principally owned by small shareholders, its control rested with Belgian and British financiers. The largest block of stock in the company, 18.14% of the 1,242,000 shares, which formerly belonged to the Belgian colonial administration, passed at independence to the Congolese government and was held in trust by the Belgian government for a time, pending the settlement of political problems. In November 1964, Moise Tshombe, who had, by that time, returned from exile to become Congolese prime minister, published a decree which had the effect of transferring control of Union Minière from Belgian banking and other interests to the Congolese government without compensation. The decree gave the Congolese government the entire portfolio of 315,675 shares in Union Minière held by the Comité Spécial du Katanga, a concession-granting concern, 2/3 of which is owned by the Congolese government and 1/3 by Belgian interests. The Belgian government considered that 123,725 of these shares belonged to the Compagnie du Katanga, which is an offshoot of the Société Générale de Belgique. The effect of the decree was to reduce the voting strength in Union Minière of the Société Générale and its associate, Tanganyika Concessions Limited, from 40% to less than 29%, while the Congolese government's votes were raised from nearly 24% to nearly 36%. This meant that in any policy dispute, the Belgians would have to rally the support of small shareholders comprising about 36%. For weeks, the Belgian government and the Congolese government talked of arranging meetings to discuss the situation. Each had a trump card. The Belgian government held the entire portfolio in trust, while the Congolese government's strength lay in the expiration of Union Minière's lease in 1990. On 28 January 1965, Tshombe arrived in Brussels for talks with the Belgian Foreign Minister, M. Spock. He asked for the immediate handing over of the portfolio shares valued at £120 million. These included 21% of the voting rights in Union Minière. The Belgians, on the other hand, demanded compensation for Belgian property damaged in the Congo Troubles, and for chartered companies who lost mineral concessions under the November Decree. They also insisted that the agreement should cover the interest payable on the defaulted Congo bonds. After days of hard bargaining, Tshombe scored what appeared to be a great triumph. He secured the £120 million portfolio of shares and also received a check from Union Minière for £660,000, representing royalties and dividends on the Congo's 210,450 shares in Union Minière, which gave it 24% of the voting rights in the company. With this diplomatic victory, he returned to Leopoldville, his hands strengthened to deal with the continuing political and military problems of the country. Since then, he has had cause to wonder just how much of the victory he achieved. In my address to the Ghana National Assembly on 22 March 1965, I gave details of the Congo situation. Quote, "In the 5 years preceding independence, the net outflow of capital to Belgium alone was £464 million. When Lumumba assumed power, so much capital was taken out of the Congo that there was a national deficit of £40 million. Tshombe is now told the Congo has an external debt of $900 million. This is a completely arbitrary figure. It amounts to an open exploitation based in naked colonialism. $900 million is supposed to be owed to United States and Belgian monopolies, after they have raped the Congo of sums of £2,500 million, £464 million, and £40 million. Imagine what this would have meant for the prosperity and well-being of the Congo. But the tragic comedy continues. To prop up Tshombe, the monopolies decided that of this invented debt of $900 million, only $250 million has to be paid. How generous indeed. bonds valued in 1959 at £267 million, representing wealth extracted from the Congo, are to be returned to the Congo after ratification by both parliaments. But the monopolies have decided that the value of the bonds is now only £170 million. So the profit to these monopolies is a net £160 million. The monopolies further announced a fraudulent program to liquidate so-called Congolese external debts of £100 million. Upon announcing this, they declare Congo is to be responsible for a further internal debt of £200 million. In plain words, they are depriving the Congolese people of another £100 million. And they call this generosity. We learned that the monopolies have declared a further burden for the suffering people of the Congo, an internal debt of £200 million, on which the Congo must pay additional compensation of £12.5 million to Belgian private interests. Beyond this, a joint Congolese-Belgian organization has been formed. It is withdrawing old bonds and replacing them with 40-year issues valued at £100 million. These will pay interest at 3.5% per annum. Note this. As the old bonds are worthless, the new organization must pay all interest on the old bonds from 1960 to 65 to the monopolies, and each holder of the worthless old bonds must be given a new bond for every old one. In short, the organization is a device to take more, to enrich the monopolies further, and to defraud the suffering people of the Congo. Tshombe has promised not to nationalize investments valued at £150 million and to retain 8,000 Belgians in the Congo. He has set up an investment bank to manage all portfolios. The value is placed at £240 million. It is controlled by Belgians. In 1 year, Union Miniere's profits were £27 million. But although the national production in Congo increased 60% between 1950 and 1957, African buying power decreased by 13%. The Congolese were taxed 280 million francs to pay for European civil servants, 440 million francs for special funds of Belgium, 1,329 million francs for the army. They were even taxed for the Brussels exhibition. Despite political independence, the Congo remains a victim of imperialism and neo-colonialism. But the economic and financial control of the Congo by foreign interests is not limited to the Congo alone. The developing countries of Africa are all subject to this unhealthy influence in one way or another." End quote. If this quotation appears to contain much detail, the newly independent peoples and their leaders have no more urgent task today than to burn into their consciousness exactly such detail. For it is such material that makes up the hard reality of this world in which we are trying to live, and in which Africa is emerging to find its place. The full significance of the part played by Union Minière in the Congolese affairs can only be understood if an examination is made of the interests involved in this powerful company. Nearly all the large enterprises engaged in exploiting the manifold riches of the Congo come within its immediate embrace, or have indirect relations with it. They do not, however, complete the extent of the company's engagements. Its connections with leading insurance, financial, and industrial houses in Europe and the United States are shown in the following list, as well as its connections with the Rhodesian Copper Belt. Compagnie Foncière du Katanga, Société Générale des Forces Hydroélectriques, SOGEFOR, Société Générale Africaine d'Électricité, SOGELEC, Société Générale Industrielle et Chimique du Jadoville, SOGECHIM, Société Métallurgique de Katanga, Metalcat, Minoterie de Katanga, Société de Recherche Minière du Sud Katanga, Sudcat, Ciment Métallurgique de Chadoville, CMJ, Charbonnage de la Loena, Compagnie des Chemins de Fer, Katanga, Dililo, Léopoldville, KDL, Société Africaine d'Explosifs, Afridex, Compagnie Maritime Congolaise, Société d'Exploitation des Mines du Sud-Katanga, Minsudcat, Société d'élevage de la Léolu, Compagnie d'assurance d'outre-mer, Société de recherche et d'exploitation des bauxites du Congo, Boxy-Congo, Exploitation forestière au Kasaï, Centre d'information du cobalt, Société Générale Métallurgique de Hoboken, Société anonyme belge d'exploitation de la navigation aérienne, Sabena, Société générale d'entreprises immobilières, SEI, Compagnie belge pour l'industrie d'aluminium, Cobeal, Foraki, Compagnie belge d'assurance maritime, Belgamar, Société auxiliaire de la Royale Union coloniale belge, Sarouk, Wanky Colliery Co. Limited, Belgian American Bank and Trust Co., New York, Belgian American Banking Corporation, New York, Compagnie Générale d'Électrolyse du Palais, SCA, Paris, Tréfilerie et Laminoir du Havre, SCA, Paris, Société belge pour l'industrie nucléaire, Belco Nucléaire. Tanganyika Concessions is one parent of Union Minière du Haut-Katanga. The other was the Katanga Belgian Special Committee. Union Minière was formed between them for the stated purpose of bringing together the interests of both organizations and the mineral discoveries Tanganyika Concessions had made under concession granted to it by the committee in the Katanga province of the Congo. The concession, which has until 11 March 1990 to run, covers an area of 7,700 square miles, containing rich copper as well as zinc, cobalt, cadmium, germanium, radium, gold, silver, iron ores, and limestone deposits. Included is a tin area of some 5,400 square miles. Ores mined are processed at a number of plants, passing through smelting and concentration stages. Hydroelectrical energy is supplied from 4 main power plants, one of which was installed by a subsidiary of Union Minière, the Société Générale des Forces Hydroélectriques. 3 others belong to Union Minière itself. These 3 plants are connected to a distribution network, part of which is devoted to supplying electrical power to the northern Rhodesian copper belt at the rate of 600 million kilowatts per year. Part of this network is owned by the Société Générale Africaine d'Électricité, SOGELEC, in which Union Minière has a substantial interest. The company's plants at Elizabethville, Jadoville, Kolwezi, and Kapushi consumed 75 million kilowatts in 1962, during which year certain damages caused to the installations in December 1961 were completely repaired. Most of the concerns in which Union Minière is interested are supported by the Société Générale de Belgique. Many also have connections with Anglo-American Corporation, either direct or by way of Tanganyika Concessions and Union Minière and their subsidiaries. Société Générale has a direct holding of 57,538 shares out of the 1,242,000 shares of no nominal value that constitute the authorized and issued capital of 8 billion francs of Union Minière. Other principal shareholders are the Katanga Special Committee and Tanganyika Concessions. Royalty on the concession is paid to the Katanga Committee by way of a sum equivalent to 10% of any dividend distributed over and above a total of 93,150,000 francs in any year. Tanganyika Concessions, by agreement with the committee, shares in this special benefit to the extent of 40%. Originally incorporated in the Congo, the company took its seat of administration and all its funds to Belgium during 1960, when the Congo was achieving independence and needed the support of those who, over the years, had drawn such heavy tribute from it. Société Générale's patronage hangs closely over Union Minière. Attached to the Katanga Special Committee is the Compagnie du Katanga. The Katanga Company is within the group of the Compagnie du Congo pour le commerce et de l'industrie, CCCI, constituted in 1886 when Leopold II was creating his personal empire in the Congo. It was on the initiative of one of Leopold's swashbucklers, Captain Thies, that CCCI, according to the chairman of the Société Générale, became the first Belgian enterprise established in the heart of Africa. His name is attached to the repair station of the first railway from Matadi to Leopoldville. Thiesville is now an important link in the railway system, and CCCI, in the words of Société Générale's chairman, has since its inception been connected directly or through its affiliates with all sectors of economic activity in the Congo by the creation of transport enterprises, agricultural industries, cement works, construction and building concerns, property companies, food industries, as well as commercial firms. The company has, affirmed the chairman, quote, contributed to endow the Congo with an equipage which places the country in the first ranks of the black African states." End quote. Several of these interlinked enterprises are included in the list of Union Minière's interests, which frequently join those of Société Générale. Thus, Société Générale Métallurgique de Hoboken, a company in which Société Générale owns 50,000 shares of no par value, processes certain semi-finished products from the Union Minière mines for the market in finished metals of high purity and individual specification. In conjunction with the Fansteel Metallurgical Corporation of Chicago, Hoboken created a joint subsidiary, Fansteel Hoboken, in December 1962 with a capital of 360 million francs. This new company will produce refractory metals, notably tantalum, columbium, tungsten, and molybdenum, in various marketable forms. Wankie Colliery Co. Ltd. represents Union Minière's participation in southern Rhodesia's coal mines. While its shareholding is not unimportant, Anglo-American Corporation predominates and acts as the company's secretary and consulting engineers. Capitalized at £6 million, of which $5,277,810 is paid up, the company owns coal mining rights over 42,000 acres, and surface area rights over about 29,000 acres of land in the Wankie district of southern Rhodesia. The means by which the mining interests dominate the government of the settler colonies are many, but the manner in which land is given away by the administration and then leased back from the buyers or lessees exhibits some of the most unashamed and open gerrymandering possible. Thus, Wankie Colliery obtained on a long-term lease by agreement with the Rhodesian government surface rights to 26,000 acres of land additional to the above-mentioned stretches, in return for which Wankie has graciously leased some 4,000 acres of surface rights and its original land holdings to the government. A directorial link, M. Van Weinberg, associated Wankie Colliery with Société Métallurgique du Katanga, Metalcat, a subsidiary of Union Minière, founded in Belgium in 1948 in conjunction with S.A. des Mines de Fonderie de Zinc de la Vieille Montagne, to construct at Kolwezi a plant capable of producing 50,000 tons of electrolytic zinc annually from concentrates provided by Union Minière's Prince Leopold mine. The Metalcat plant produces zinc, cadmium, and refined copper. With a capital of 750 million francs, represented by 150,000 shares of no par value, the company made a net profit of 160,831,393 francs in 1961, after providing for various liabilities, among which dividends accounted for 120 million francs, almost three-quarters of net profit, and directors' percentages, 7,857,517 francs. Union Minière's partner in Metalcat, Vieille Montagne, is one of the big European mining concerns producing zinc, lead, and silver. A Belgian company, founded in 1837, it has silver-lead-zinc properties in Belgium, France, Algeria, Tunis, Germany, and Sweden, and metallurgical works in Belgium, France, and Germany. Of the 405,000 shares of no par value, constituting its capital of 1 billion francs, Société Générale owns 40,756. It accounts for the year ended 31 December 1961, showed a net profit of 143,287,506 francs, after various provisions, of which the largest was for re-equipment, amounting to 100 million francs. Dividends took 101,250,000 francs, and taxes thereon 27,700,000 francs. Directors' percentages took 14,327,760 francs. Legal reserves seem to account for considerable sums, which these large companies set aside. This item was credited with 100 million francs in Vieille Montagne's 1961 accounts. The Compagnie du Katanga, like Union Minière, attached to the Katanga Special Committee, joined Union Minière in creating in the Congo in 1932 the Société de Recherche Minière du Sud Katanga, Sudcat. Both Compagnie du Katanga and Union Minière had interests in a large area adjacent to the latter's properties, which they decided to combine. With Congolese independence, control of Sudcat, as well as its funds, were transferred to Belgium. Copper deposits at Musoshi and Lubembe and zinc-lead-sulfur ore bodies at Kengere and Lombe, owned by Sudcat, were transferred to the Société d'Exploitation des Mines de Sud-Katanga, Minsudcat, formed in the Congo in June 1955 with a capital of 50 million Congolese francs. Sudcat holds interests in the Companhia Carbonifera de Mozambique, concerned with coal mining, as well as in Boxy-Congo and Metalcat. Metalcat created a local company in 1962, the Société Métallurgique Katangaise, with a capital of 600 million francs represented by 150,000 shares, to which it transferred its Katanga installations. The zinc ingots produced are being processed by Metalcat. One of the Sudcat's most important investments is in Soge Mines Limited. This company, though registered in Montreal and operating in Canada, is so intimately connected with the Société Générale that it has on its board 6 of the Société's directors, 2 of whom are also on the Union Minière Directorate. Société Générale's investments in Soge Mines covers 259,250 preferred shares of $10 each and 1,281,250 ordinary shares of $1 each, representing over 1/5 of the Canadian company's issued capital. A wholly owned subsidiary, Soge Mines Development Co. Limited, is carrying out exploration work in various parts of Canada and holds minority interests in other mining enterprises. Soge Mines Limited is an investment and holding company participating in mining, oil, and industrial ventures. LC and FW Park in The Anatomy of Big Business graphically make the point that its, quote, relationships between Canadian and Belgian capital are based on the alliances that operate both in Belgium or the Congo and in Canada, end quote. Soge Mines' parent, Société Générale, devotes considerable space in its annual report to the former's operations. The most important concern in which they are interested is Canadian Petrofina Limited. In 1961, Canadian Petrofina made the record profit of $5,516,926. Petrofina is a Belgian oil company with international associations, especially in the new African states, both inside and outside the oil industry. Its connections with Société Générale are not limited to shareholdings and directorial interlocking. Associations are maintained with several leading banks, including the Banque Belge, the Banque de l'Union Française, the Crédit Foncier de Belgique, the Banque de Paris des Pays-Bas, and a number of insurance companies. Under the impetus of Société Générale and certain associates, a subsidiary of Petrofina, Société Chimique des Dérives de Pétrole, Petrochine, underwent a financial reorganization during 1962, when certain assets were passed to it, principally by Petrofina. Société Générale used the opportunity to make a participation of 29 million francs to the company's capital, quote, in which several other enterprises within its group equally own interests, end quote. Société Générale's shareholding is 58,000 shares of no par value. Cobnam, a joint venture of Petrochim and Union Carbide, brings together the banking interests of Société Générale with those interested in the Great American Chemical Corporation, the Continental Insurance Co., and the Hanover Bank, which is involved with Anglo-American Corporation and the banking consortia now engaging themselves in ventures in the new African states. There is some Rockefeller influence in the Hanover Bank, and it is linked by financial interchanges with the American Fire Group of New York, a principal fire and casualty insurance company. Union Carbide and Carbone manufactures enriched uranium, and through the influence of its direct bankers, Hanover Bank, and indirect associations with the Rockefeller Mellon Group, has become the major contractor to the government-owned atomic energy plants at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Paducah, Kentucky. For this purpose, a separate division was formed, Union Carbide Nuclear Company, uranium and vanadium mines being worked in Colorado, and a tungsten mine and mill in California. Union Carbide's range of interests in the chemical sphere is wide, it having a very large synthetic materials sector. A Canadian subsidiary of Union Carbide is Shawinigan Chemicals, which it half owns in company with Monsanto Chemical Co. and Canadian Rosan Chemical Limited. An affiliate, B.A. Shawinigan Limited, is owned by British American Oil, connected with the Bank of Montreal and Mellon. Shawinigan Chemicals has several subsidiaries which are equally controlled with U.S. companies.
Société Générale has its own nuclear concern, Société Belge pour l'Industrie Nucléaire, Belgo-Nucléaire, in which we have noted Union Minière's interests. This is only a single short strand of the tangled web that relates predominant banking interests in Europe and America to industrial undertakings in Africa and other parts of the world. It gives only the barest indication of the elastic character of these interests. The incursions of Société Générale into the oil world are not confined to Petrofina and its associates. In association with the Société Compensis de Recherche et d'Exploitation Minérale, has an affiliate operating in Venezuela, Petrobelge de Venezuela. Petrobelge is linked with Petrofina in the Bureau de Recherche et de Participation Minière Marocain in prospecting in Morocco, the first stages of which will be completed in 1963. Italy is another scene of Petrobelge's activities, where, in collaboration with the Italian company Ausonia Mineraria and the French organization Société Française de Participation Pétrolière, Petrobar, it is investigating hydrocarbons in the concessions obtained by Ausonia. In addition, Petrobelge has associated itself with an Italian-French-German consortium in a venture prospecting seismic regions on the Adriatic coast. Both Petrobelge and Petrofina have got together with the Spanish company, Ciepsa, to prospect for hydrocarbons with a concession owned by Ciepsa. Direct links with Belgium's military program and, accordingly, with that of NATO, are closely operated through the Poudrière Réunie de Belgique, whose capital was increased during 1962 from 203,900,000 francs to 266,700,000 francs. At the beginning of the year, it absorbed the Fabrique Nationale de Produits Chimiques et d'Explosifs at Boncel, Belgium, whose purchase included a participation in the capital of S.A. d'Arendoc. The acquisition of the latter's selling organization has added to the scope of the company's civil activities. These Belgian concerns are linked with the Société Africaine d'Explosifs, Afridex, in which Union Minière has interests. The military and nuclear interpenetration gives special emphasis to the uranium output of the Union Minière complex, which in the post-war years upheld the Belgian economy and helped it to refurbish its industrial equipment. Out of the Congo came the spoils that provided for the further exploitation of the territory and the high productive ratio the lately devastated, war-ridden, and Nazi-occupied country attained so swiftly. Even before the Second World War, uranium was already making the Shinkolobwe mine a very important asset to Union Minière and the Belgian government. As one writer puts it, quote, the Union Minière achieved a certain notoriety in the 20s and 30s by obliging would-be purchasers of radium to pay $70,000 a gram, until competition from the Canadian Eldorado Company forced the price down to a mere $20,000 a gram, a level at which both companies were able to make a profit, end quote. According to the calculation of experts, Union Minière's profits were estimated to be 3 billion francs a year, $60 million in terms of American currency, and over 20 million pounds sterling. In spite of the disturbed situation in Katanga and the protests of the company that their business had been seriously impeded, Union Minière's balance sheets for the year ended 31 December 1960 showed a net profit of 2,365,280,563 francs. Dividends absorbed no less than 1,863,000,000 francs, rather more than half of net profits, carrying a dividend tax which went to the Belgian government of 381,578,313 francs. Emoluments to directors, auditors, and staff fund for Europeans absorbed 84,609,333 francs, while permanent committee members received 7,111,567 francs. Eldorado Mining and Refining Limited is by no means independent of the big business and financial interests which have Canada's industry in their grip, and whose associations with Africa and other less developed areas of the world are interwoven. A former private secretary to an ex-minister sits on its board, which is linked with Canadian Aluminum, whose directorate includes a former Governor-General of Canada. As we go along, we shall see how these interlockings of international finance and exalted public figures and, quote, the people's representatives, end quote, create an oligarchy of power pursuing and achieving their special interests, which have no relation whatsoever to the public good, with which they are made to appear synonymous. We shall find that the Royal Bank of Canada, represented on Eldorado's board by W.J. Bennett, has connections with Société Générale and Union Minière through interlockings via Sogemines and prominent insurance and banking groups. Wonky Colliery Co. Limited, for instance, gives us M. van Weinberg, a director of Union Minière, Metalcat, and Société Générale, several of whose directorial colleagues sit on Sogemines, whose chairman, W.H. Howard, besides being a vice president of the Royal Bank and chairman of the Montreal Trust, is linked with the Rothermore newspaper group in Great Britain, and is a director of Algoma Steel Corporation Limited, which owns 4 coal mines in West Virginia and limestone and dolomite deposits in Michigan State. Algoma supplied the steel for the construction of a $20 million plant at Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, for the Mannesmann Tube Company, a subsidiary of the Mannesmann Steel Company, which is a prominent member of the Ruhr industry of Western Germany. Mannesmann is said to be fast increasing its penetration into Canadian industry. Its board includes representatives of the Deutsche Bank and Dresdner Bank, both of which are much in evidence in the consortia engaged in Africa and connected predominantly with Anglo-American Corporation. Chairman of Mannesmann since 1934 is W. Zonger, quote, a former member of the Nazi Party and of the SS. He was one of the group of big German industrialists who financed the Nazi rise to power and provided the armaments for the Nazi war machine. In the days of the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union, Mannesmann opened short-lived affiliates in Kiev and Dnipropetrovsk, end quote. These are the forces that link with the South African, Rhodesian, Congo, Angolan, and Mozambique mining magnates and industrialists, and we see them now entering the development projects of many of the new African states, hiding their identity behind government and international agencies, whose real character is at once exposed when their affiliations are carefully examined. They are the real directors of neo-colonialism.